The bell is ringing for the back-to-school bash at Capital Ford in Santa Fe. Don't be late to add up big factory incentives combined with final dealer subtractions on current inventory. Get back-to-school savings in a new 25 Ford F-150 STX. Buy for $699 a month plus 4.9% APR financing for 72 months. Or a new 25 Ford Bronco Sport. Lease for just $399 a month. It all adds up to a great time to buy during the back-to-school bash at Capital Ford in Santa Fe.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Huddle Up. I'm your host, Ed Nunez, and before we bring our guest in, I want to introduce our co-host, my son, ProView play-by-play announcer and ProView producer, and going down to Western New Mexico this week to do some PA for the first time. My son, Nick Nunez. Son, welcome to the show.
Dad, good evening. How you doing? Excited. High school football has kicked off. Had a really good week one, and excited to talk to our next guest here tonight.
Well, you know, our producer backstage is Ryan Tamari. And Ryan, thank you so much for being our producer. Our guest tonight on Huddle Up is Bernalillo head football coach John Cobos. Coach Cobos is starting his 11th season as head coach in Bernalillo and his 18th season of coaching overall. Last week in the opening game of the season, the Spartans beat the Valley Vikings 16-14. The Vikings, ironically, are coached by his uncle, Billy Cobos. Coach, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Nick. I appreciate y'all having me.
You know, Coach, I look back, and it's 4 years since I had you on the sports desk. Seemed like it was just yesterday. You know, and you and I have talked since then, and we had a really good talk on the sports desk 4 years ago, and here you are, Bernalillo, one of the main players here, and it's been a trek up to the top, and we'll talk a lot more about that. I'm actually going to go to my son who covered the game with former Valley head coach Judge Chavez last Thursday, and I'm always very, very proud of my son. So, Nick, you go ahead and ask Coach Cobos the first couple of questions.
Thanks, Dad. I appreciate it, Coach. So I went back and watched the game on Game Vision, and, man, that was tough. You know, I think Coach Judge Chavez and I were talking pretty typical first game of the season with a lot of penalties. Guys got jitters. But you guys went down early, man. It was 14-0 Valley. You guys had some early turnovers, an early interception, and then a turnover on downs at the Valley 3. It just seemed like couldn't quite punch it in on the offensive end. But, man, your defense just stepped up big in the third quarter. 2 back-to-back fumble recoveries, 1 for an 82-yard touchdown. Just overall, man, what do you make how your team played?
Well, Nick, you know, I think we and you had talked before the game, and I had told you that we had some, you know, new starters, you know, guys that were JV players last year and now getting their first varsity start. And so, as you said, you're right. You were right on top of it. It took us a little while to kind of get going, get those jitters out, get those kids going. And you're playing a, you know, tough team, you know, like the Valley Vikings, who always give us, you know, a handful. And we knew that coming into the game. So just watching these kids, you know, grow up right in front of our eyes from the first quarter to the fourth quarter, and being able to weather that storm that, you know, that Valley gave us, you know, right off the back. And you know, again, respect to them. As you guys know, that's my uncle and his staff over there. And you know, we have nothing but respect for them and their program and what they're doing. But, man, our kids are super resilient. You know, my defensive coordinator, Jermaine McChristensen, just does a phenomenal job with that side of the ball. and having kids, believe in what it is that he teaches, and 11 hats to the ball. And as you can see, Nick, you were there, and our defense really just kind of settled down, I guess would be the word, and played ball and got after a good Valley Vikings offense.
Coach, what can you share with us about what you told the team in the halftime locker room? The score at halftime was 14-2 Valley. You guys scored on a safety when the Valley punter stepped out of bounds. But one thing I shared with Coach Chavez, a team like yours, Coach, you guys 17-7, I think, over the last 2 seasons. It's 9-3 last year. You guys get to the semifinals. You guys know how to win football games. And I think Valley's one of those programs that's up and coming. They won a district championship a couple years ago, but it just seemed like you guys didn't panic, man. You guys found a way to win. 2 big turnovers in the third quarter. What was the message to your team in the locker room for what you can share?
Well, going in, I will tell you, coaches, what they did and adjustments that we made. And before we even walked into the locker room, I can't give enough kudos to my staff from the offensive side to the defensive side and what we wanted to do when we went in. We had a plan. When I walked in to talk to the boys, my message was simple. It's a 4-quarter game, right? Valley got us in the first quarter. They won that quarter. I believe that we settled down in the second quarter. I mean, I know it was only a safety, but I felt like we really settled down in the second quarter. And there were still 2 more quarters to go. So what were we going to do? The game is still there. And in the past, Bernalillo, if they were down 14-0 at half, it probably was a ball game. That was probably it. We probably weren't coming back from that. So the resilience of our team, our coaches, that never stopped playing, our players never stopped playing, our coaches never stopped coaching. And I really do believe that was the difference in the game.
For sure, Coach. I want to give a shout out to some of your players. I mean, it's a team effort. Everybody deserves credit. But Mario Molinado, number 30, man, plays both ways, plays linebacker on the defensive side, running back. I think he scored both of your touchdowns. He ran that fumble recovery back 80-plus yards, scored that touchdown from 6 yards out. Josh Barajas, number 10. That kid's tough, man. Had some tough yards up the middle. He's not the biggest kid either, but just tough. 136 yards of total offense. I mean, some struggles on the offensive end, brand new quarterback this year, but you guys forced 6 Valley turnovers and that blocked field goal at the end of the quarter, Coach. I think that was just kind of symbolic of the defensive effort that you guys had in that game.
Definitely, and those two gentlemen that you mentioned, both seniors this year, and they unfortunately were behind another great senior from last year, Nathan and Senior, so they weren't able to get as much playing time on the offensive side of the ball as they wanted. So now it's their time to shine, and they're definitely taking advantage of that. They sure did in week 1, and so it was nice to see. And gosh, Nick, those 2 guys did have a great game, no doubt. But man, kudos to our offensive line. 3.5 minutes left in the game after we blocked that field goal, and for us to be able to line up behind that offensive line and run the clock out. I mean, that's a testament to my offensive line coach Michael Royce and Coach Jermaine McChristian also helps down there, and those guys just did a phenomenal job. As far as controlling the Valley D line and being able to let us run the clock out.
Yeah, for sure. Dad, go ahead.
Coach, you mentioned that the Bernalillo defense, and you found a way to win. I think that says a lot about the program and where you were at and where you're at now. You mentioned that in the past. This isn't the past anymore. I think we can say this is now. This is what you built. This is the culture that you have now. You mentioned we had a short talk before we got on. You lost in the semifinals to the Bloomfield Bobcats, the eventual Class 4A champions last season, but it was the first time Bernalillo had ever advanced to the semifinals. We know, you and I talked about this a long time ago, man. Bernalillo had long been known as a basketball town. Going back to the late great Henry Sanchez at Spartan Alley, Terry Darnell, Clarence Griego. They had won a couple of championships. Bernalillo, I remember going to Spartan Alley. I told you my brother played for St. Pius, and I remember going there and seeing the whole town there and being a little bit like, man, wow, so it was known as a basketball town. Now, Coach Darnell hired you, and we'll talk about that later. Tell us about the challenges of building a winning program there.
I just can't say thank you enough to the community, to my administration. Of course, you mentioned Terry Darnell, the one that gave me a chance and actually believed in me. I don't think I'd be in the position I am today if he hadn't given me that opportunity. So I give him a ton of thanks and gratitude for giving me this opportunity and allowing me the time to be able to build the program, right? Especially like you said, Bernalillo wasn't known for football, so it was kind of, Ken Noel also came in underneath it. He was a mentor of me, and he did some good things while he was there. And then it kind of went down for a little while. And so for us to be able to build it back, it was the kids buying into what we were selling, right? You have to be able to have kids that want to be in your program. So when I took over the program, I had about 17 kids. When I took over that first year as an interim in 2014, I'm proud to say now we're sitting around 70, 75 kids in the program, right? Which is just phenomenal. The kids want to come out, they want to be a part of us, they want to be part of our coaching staff, and then, it's not a one-person show. I had a vision a long time ago, and I knew what I wanted to do, and I had to hire guys that believed in the same vision as I did, and I'm very blessed to have them with me, and they trusted me to lead this program. My admin, my district AD now is Ira Harge. So as he came in, this is already being formed, and he allowed me to continue to keep building it. And it goes all the way up to, to my superintendent. They just, they allow me to do what I need to do in order to, to build this program and to continue to bring kids into the program. And really, Ed, I'm an athletic supporter all the way around. It's not just football. I want these kids to be involved in anything and everything, whatever their choice is. It's their choice. They get 4 years of high school, and it should be a memorable time for them, something that they enjoy. So football, we don't want it to be a job. I mean, yeah, there's hard days, as you guys know, the summer, 2 days, and all that stuff, but we want them to be able to enjoy it. And, we want to be able, when they leave our program, we want to make sure that they go from boys to men.
Right. You talked about that, about building young men and the adversity and getting through those challenges. There's so much. Your first season, you told me this, you went 0-10 right out of the gate. And, it's hard, right? You're trying to build a program, but challenges, adversity. What was that like, and how did you as a football staff overcome that type of adversity to be where your program is today?
Well, again, we're going to go back to Terry Darnell because, that first year, I didn't know if I wanted to continue in this role. I didn't know if I was meant to be, if I was good enough to lead these young men from the many communities that feed into Bernalillo. So, I think Coach Darnell for continuing to pushing me. He saw something in me that I didn't see at the time. And, I'm forever grateful for that. I can't thank my wife, John Cobos, for all her support and everything she's done as far, behind every good man is a great woman. And I'm a true believer in that. And my two daughters, Amaray and Annalise Cobos, they share their dad a whole bunch with a lot of boys. And I spent a lot of time in Bernalillo. I'm there a whole bunch. And when the football season starts, it's kind of, I kiss my wife goodbye and tell her I'll see her in November kind of thing, So very blessed to have that support at home because, you can't be, a good coach or, somebody that's trying to be successful without having that support from home. So I'm very blessed to be able to have that. The support of the community, right? All the different business owners, the different families. I've coached some families now that I've coached like 4 brothers. Let's take the Molinars, for instance, Mario. Nick was just talking about that. I've coached his brother Diego, I've coached his brother Luis, and I've coached his brother Juan Carlos. So this is the 4th brother of that family. So I've been there long enough now to where I think I've earned the respect of the community. They understand what it is that I'm trying to do. I'm an open book if they want to come and talk to me or sit down or discuss something, and I try to do my very best to make sure that I represent the Bernalillo community all the time and everywhere that I'm at. So again, just having that support, giving me the time to be able to get it to where it's at. And, it wasn't easy. It's not easy. But, again, I'm going to give kudos to my family and I'm going to give kudos to my coaching staff because they do believe in me. And I ask them every year, when we're done, do you guys still think I'm the guy to lead this program? Because I never want to stand in the way of advancement or the program going on to the next level if I'm not the one to get it there. And so far, so good. They've kept me around. So I'm very blessed.
Yeah, Coach, I think, what you've accomplished. You mentioned all the players in that, the community, Coach Darnell, who we'll talk about, Coach Harge. I have the tremendous respect for both of those gentlemen. I've known them for a long time, and I ref Terry's games when he was at Bernalillo. And man, that was because before the game, we got hugs, hey, what's up, Ed? And during the game, that dude would go berserk, and after the game, hey, what's up, man? That guy hated to lose more than anybody I know. And it was funny because near the end, the guy's a great player, right? He's one of the best players we ever saw. And I said, Terry, stop playing with the kids, man. Kids go home and say, who's the best player on the team? It's coach. Stop playing with them kids. We used to just laugh and joke about that. And I still I love the guy, man. I always have. Go ahead, son.
Yeah, Coach, want to take you back a little bit to last year's team, 9-3, 4 seed in the Class 4A state tournament. You guys fall in the semifinal to Bloomfield. You talked about coaching sets of brothers. Well, your tight end, punter, and I think he plays on defense too, Ulysses Castro, his older brother, I believe I'm pronouncing his name right, Uriel Castro, was phenomenal for you at quarterback for a couple seasons. Last year he threw for 2,500 passing yards, 35 touchdowns. He also ran for 205 yards and 7 rushing touchdowns. I think he went on to play at Eastern New Mexico University. So just talk about what it was like coaching a guy like him.
The great thing about Uriel is that, I've known him for a while. I've been blessed to know his parents before they even both stepped on the football field. And when Ulysses, his younger brother, was going to be an 8th grader, that's whenever Uriel decided to come out and play football, and I was a sophomore year. And we played a first game of the year, which was against Valley. And after that game, I needed to make some decisions, thought long and hard all weekend long. It was like, hey, I see something in this young man. And he was a sophomore at the time, so brought him in and decided that I was going to start him. And that very next week was against Espanola, and he did some good things, some growing things and so forth. But he was groomed. He was groomed. Coach Blake Miller, my offensive coordinator, did a phenomenal job in working with Uriel, spending a lot of time with him, learning how to read defenses, understanding progression, right? Just spending some time to develop the young man. He had some natural ability. Don't get me wrong, right? Throwing the ball down the field. I mean, he is at Eastern now playing baseball. He signed a college scholarship there, and we're very proud of him. But he was groomed sophomore year. I think he was like 11 touchdowns, 15 interceptions as a sophomore. Junior year, he really turned that around and had a lot better stats and going into a senior year. So and he was phenomenal, right? He did some great things, and Nick, just like I do, right? Football is not a one-person game, right? You can have a phenomenal player like that, but the offensive line's got to block, receivers got to run and catch, defense has got to play ball, special teams, and so forth. So Uriel was a big part of what we did, and he definitely had some great stats to back himself up. But man, he was around some great talent, and all 4 of our receivers are back this year. Joseph Duran to lead that group, and senior Kenneth Seiss, Ivan Ruiz, and then of course with Ulysses as our tight end, Uriel had some great targets to throw to, and we were able to maximize that. The season, Bloomfield. I mean, my goodness, Coach Kovacs and his group do a phenomenal job with their team, and they were just outstanding last year. As you can tell by their record, 12-0, right? They didn't lose to nobody, and we played them pretty tough in the first game, in the district game, and then, we dropped our last district game to Taos, a very, very good Taos football team, which dropped us. We probably would have nailed the 2 seed if we would have pulled off that game, and we didn't. So we ended up having to play Bloomfield in the semis, and they were ready for us. They definitely were for the first game. So, but yeah, Uriel's a phenomenal young man, and we're blessed to say he came through our program.
For sure, Coach. And you talk about Bloomfield. You guys played them twice last year. The first time was in district up at Bloomfield. And that game was 20-7, man. I think that was you guys held Bloomfield to their lowest point total of the season, I'm pretty sure. And then, a 13-point margin. I think the only game that was that close was when they played 6A Pedro Vista earlier in the season. So seems like you guys matched up with them pretty well. Looking at Class 4A football this year, I mean, I'm just thinking it's week 1. It's still really early. A lot of things got to play out, man. But, Bloomfield had a nice win over Belen. St. Pius looked really good over West Mesa. You guys cranked one out against Valley. Just talk to us about 4A football and, who you think stands out early on.
Well, you got to give all respect to Bloomfield, defending state champs, right? Again, like I told you, Coach Kovacs does a phenomenal job with his staff. up there with those guys. So, Bloomfield definitely is going to be in the ringer. Coach Flakes and the St. Pius Sartans, we know they have a very good football team. We've seen them this summer. And obviously, they made it all the way to the state championship last year. So, we got to give them their respect. They're definitely going to be in the hunt. I'd like to throw our name in there. I like to think the Bernalillo Spartans are going to be in there. We're all going to get better week in and week out. And you never can, cut out teams like the Portales Rams. And I know they had a tough game against Goddard, but, Goddard is very well improved with Coach Bolaños and that staff. And, I'm a Roswell guy by heart, so I know those guys, pretty well down there and what they do. Also, Taos is always a well-coached football team. I think a lot of people are sleeping on Grants. I think Grants is, got a good football team. Coach Brown and his staff down there, are doing some phenomenal things. Silver is always going to be in the hunt. Academy had a nice win this week, against Moriarty. So Coach Lee and his group are doing good. So, the big gun is going to be Bloomfield, and we all know that, right? And we're all climbing, and trying to get to that. But there's a lot of good football teams in 4A. So don't count out 4A and what's going to happen. There's going to be some good games, as the season goes on.
For sure. Dad, go ahead.
No question about that. You mentioned you've got Bloomfield on your schedule, an improved Aztec team. They came back against Rio Grande, trailing 20-0 at the half, and they came back and beat Rio Grande. Rio Grande is much improved. I expect Christopher Smalls to get a couple of wins there. His quarterback is as good as any quarterback. Reads the defense, has a big arm. So that was a game I covered last week. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned Coach Darnell, who was a staple at Bernalillo for years as a player, as a coach, superintendent for a while. So you mentioned how he had helped you become a better coach and build your program. Now you're under the guidance of Ira Harge Jr., very good friend. I think the world of Ira. He won 4 titles as the head basketball coach at Pecos. How's it been to work with Coach Harge? He's still on the bench. I don't know if he's stepped away now or is still going to coach, but he's got a lot of experience. Tell us a little bit about how it's been to work with Coach Harge.
It's been great. As soon as Ira was named our district athletic director, I'm pretty sure I was the first one to reach out to him and just tell him, congratulations, Coach. I know of you. I look forward to working with you. Please let me know what you need from me, so we can, get together and get this athletic department off the ground. And Ira's done a great job. He's come in and, he's trusted in me. I think I'm the longest tenured coach there at Bernalillo now. So, he's really, bounced a lot of things off of me, and we're trying to do it together. I'm the middle school AD in the district right now, so I'm able to work with Ira hand in hand, and a lot of the things. Ultimately, he is the boss and the one that talks to our superintendent, or answers to our superintendent. So, but he's done a great job. He brings those 4 state championships in, as a coach. So I'm able to go to him and talk to him about certain situations and just ask how he dealt with this or how he would deal with this, but again, one of the things I really respect from Coach Harge is he allows me to be me. He tells me the things that I need to hear when I need to hear them. He lets me vent to him when I need to vent to him, and help out. But he's done a phenomenal job. He's there to help us all, right? Football is just one program underneath his hat. We got both, girls and boys soccer going on right now in the fall, and volleyball and cross country and cheerleading, and those sports are all just as important as football is. So, Coach Harge does a good job of making sure that that we're all important and we all can access him. So it's been great, with him, and he has a great athletic secretary in Paulette Mays. So if we can access Coach Harge, because he's running around and got 900 billion things going on. His right hand person is Miss Mays, and we're able. So the athletic department's in very good hands right now.
He also won a basketball championship as he was a member of the 1982 St. Pius championship team, and his brother Joe, a member of the '85 team at St. Pius, undefeated. So Coach Harge has been around, knows championships. I got a quote from Coach about you. This is Coach Cobos in a nutshell. Coach Cobos and I had to meet with a student athlete on a disciplinary issue. Cobos started softly, then mildly escalated, and ended with, Coach Cobos loves you and cares about you. By the end, this kid couldn't apologize enough and was crying tears of joy. I'm thinking to myself, wow, this guy can really work with kids. I call him the kid whisperer, laugh out loud. it's been a distinct pleasure to work with John Cobos. I think that's high praise because not everybody has those touch with kids. The touch push every button with the individuals. They don't. You know, I played for a guy at Highland, and rest in peace. He didn't have that. Not everybody does. You know, and I think that's really high praise from Coach Harge there for you. Like I said, I know Ira well, and I really like him a lot. He's a good guy. He's a good man. You know, and I think you're in good hands there. So that was a good quote from him. You know, I'm going to ask you one more question, then we're going to go to my son. This week, matched up against the Highland Hornets, man. And I told you I had that game last Thursday. It's 12-12, 4th and 7, 17 seconds left at the Monsanto 25. I'm telling Gary Sanchez, my color guy, we're going to OT, man. And Highland strikes and scores. 4th and 7 on a slant. And I mean, it was right on the numbers, right? And, you know, you mentioned Coach Lovato, and you were very good friends. I know Phil very well. I'm a Highland guy. I told you that. And I think he in the second game last year, you edged Highland 20-19. It was a fight, right? And I think in going back in the history of Highland, and I told you we don't get the base kids anymore. We don't get the Altura kids. I think he's made the best use of Coach Lovato of the personnel that he has. I really do. He's gonna go different. He's gonna go double tight, power eye. He's gonna use a million formations. What kind of game can we expect on Thursday night? It should be a great one.
I can't give Coach Lovato enough praise. I told you that earlier, Ed, when we were talking. You know, man, and you know, I'm going to give him. We're gonna talk before the game, and we're gonna BS a little bit and so forth, and then we're gonna part our ways, and he's gonna go to his sideline, I'm gonna go to my sideline, and we're both gonna try to win a football game, and it's gonna be a slugfest. It's always a slugfest with Highland. We have the ultimate respect for their staff. We're all great friends. We all see each other all year long with powerlifting season, with track season. We're around each other, all the time. They go to our 7-on-7. We see them around. We always hang out with Coach Lovato and his staff, and he's a phenomenal coach. His staff and him dial up things. We know they're going to give us everything that we can handle, and we got to be ready for it. And we got to be disciplined and well coached, and be ready for a dogfight. And that's what we're expecting. We know that, right? Every year that we played them, we've gotten a dogfight. It's been a close game every year that we played them. So we don't expect anything less or anything different. We know Coach Lovato is going to bring out his best. He's going to have his kids ready. And, they're going to run through a brick wall for him. He does a phenomenal job with the Hornets. I
got to say this, that in the history of Highland coaches, Bill Gentry, Gary Sanchez, Mark Henry, Judge Chavez, who was a, darn good coach. Judge was there for 17 years. People forget that. Everybody thinks, he's a Viking. He graduated from Valley, coached at Valley. He was there at Highland for 17 years. And I got to say, I think Coach Lovato with the personnel, those other guys had, they had great players. They did. Coach Lovato's got a few too, but as far as coaching and using the personnel he's kept them very competitive, I think. Son, go ahead and wrap it up. We'll wrap it up here, but go ahead, son.
Yeah, Coach, just a couple more questions. Looking at the schedule for you guys, man, you guys are road warriors to start the game, start the season. You guys got 4 games on the road. Had to take on Valley at Nusenda Community Stadium in Albuquerque. You got to take on Highland in Albuquerque. Then you got to go down to Portales on September 5th, and then you got to travel to Moriarty on September 12th. You don't play your first home game until kind of almost midway through the season against Espanola Valley. But just talk about the challenges to the early part of the schedule, Coach.
We've known about it all summer long there, Nick. Talking to the boys, you said the right term, road warriors, and we knew that. And you got to take it week by week. Last week, all our focus is on Valley. This week, all our focus is on Highland, and that's all we're thinking about, right? But as we move forward, we got to take it week by week. We understand it's going to be a long time before we get to play in front of our home crowd. We love playing, at Spartan Stadium, but we know it's going to be a little while before we get there. So we got to take care of business. The focus is Highland this week and on Thursday, and we got to get ourselves ready to play that ball game and each and every week. So day by day, week by week, game by game, and that's the way we're taking it. That's the way we're looking at this season.
For sure, Coach. Well, it was a pleasure calling your game. I enjoyed it. I really did. I wish you guys health and success the rest of the season. Dad, go ahead.
Coach, our pleasure in having you on. You've got Highland, then you got to go to Portales, like my son was saying. Moriarty, Espanola Valley, Kirtland Central, Aztec, Bloomfield, Rants and Towson, I've got to give Coach Kovacs, as you mentioned, a lot of credit. You know, I know Mike well. I called 2 of the championships up there. He does, like you said, a great job. And they're the hunted, right? St. Pius looks good. You guys look good. I think Highland's going to make some noise. You know, Roswell. I'm talking. That's another class. So yeah, there's going to be some. Good football played the rest of the season for sure. Coach John Cobos, thank you for being our guest tonight on Huddle Up, and we wish you the best of luck against Highland on Thursday.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Nick, for having me, man. I appreciate it, and hopefully, I can make another trip back.
Absolutely.
You bet, Coach. Talk to you soon.
All right, thank you.
Son, what do you think about? I really like Coach Cobos a lot. You know, it's funny because I had him on 4 years ago, but and I hadn't talked to him that much. But it's like a contact that I have that I could just pick up. Hey, Coach, what's up? And boom, you're right back to where you started 4 years ago. What'd you think?
Oh, I liked him a lot. I had the opportunity to chat with him a little bit before the game when Coach Judge Chavez and I did it last Thursday. And just passionate, man. And I think he's in it for the right reasons. You know, that quote that you shared from the athletic director Ira Harge, you hit it right on the head, Dad. Not everybody can connect with kids that way. And I can tell just by having the opportunity to call his game that Coach Cobos gets the most out of his kids. When you're down 14-2 at halftime, you have a couple turnovers, you get down to the 3-yard line, you can't punch it in. Some coaches hit the panic button, man. They start screaming at kids, and kids feed off that energy. But he channels that energy in the right way. I think he's a great leader of young men. He's in it for the right reasons, and he was a pleasure to talk to.
He really was. I really like him a lot. I think he's doing a great job. Son, let's go over the 6A scores first. Our producer, Ryan Tamari, who's, he's got the standings up, the rankings of the first week, and Richard Tripp and Manny Lucero do a great job with the NMOT, the coaches poll. Go ahead and read. You go ahead and read some of the first 6A scores that we had from this past weekend.
Well, just so the font is kind of small, we'll read out the top 10 in Class 6A first. Rounding it out at the top is Cleveland. Number 2 is Las Cruces. Volcano Vista, number 3. Centennial, number 4. La Cueva, number 5. Rio Rancho, number 6. Hobbs, number 7. El Dorado, number 8. Pedro Vista, number 9. Los Lunas at 10. And so we'll look, starting with the Cleveland Storm, Dad. I mean, I think we've talked about it. They are the perennial favorite in Class 6A, although there's a team down south, the Las Cruces Bulldogs, who may have something to say about that. But Cleveland, an impressive opening week 1 win over Centennial, 55-42. Senior quarterback Jordan Hatch throws for 282 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns. Very efficient, 17 of 23. He also rushed for a touchdown. Just a lot of weapons for this Cleveland Storm team, Dad. We had Jacob Maldonado, the receiver, the UNM commit on Huddle Up a few weeks ago. He had 5 catches, 64 yards, 4 rushes for 108 yards. But really, it was the sophomore receiver and kick returner, Evan Nanez, who had 3 touchdowns, an 81-yard kick return for a score, a rushing touchdown, and a receiving touchdown. Coach Robert Garza was quoted in the Albuquerque Journal, article by James Yotis, said he was disappointed with giving up 42 points, but the Storm still looked like the team to beat, Dad.
Okay, so Coach Garza, think about that. He said they weren't on all cylinders, son. You mentioned another weapon, Evan Nanez, and they've got Los Lunas this week. Los Lunas dropping 1 to Roswell last week. So we'll go through these. Las Cruces 61, Mayfield 6. Las Cruces running back Danny Amaro, 4 total touchdowns, 231 rushing yards. Las Cruces scored on touchdowns on every one of its drives. 10th win in a row for Cruces over Mayfield, and the biggest rout of that storied rivalry. This goes back to the legendary Jim Bradley, the late Jim Bradley at Mayfield. Jim Bradley won a lot of titles, son, even before you were born. And man, he would give the North. He'd say it all the time. We played real football down here in the South. He'd say it in the paper, man. He'd throw some jabs. So Cruz is big over Mayfield. Rio Rancho big, 52-12 over Trisco. Rams are at home this week against Cibola. Santa Fe 32, Capital 0. Santa Fe's head coach won his first game as a head coach. Clovis 32, Farmington 27. Clovis snapped an 11-game losing streak. And son, that's unusual for that program was storied. Albuquerque High 24, Cibola 21. David Housen, his first game comes up empty. Go ahead, son. Get the rest of them.
Yeah, well, Pedro Vista, Sandia, that was a game that went to overtime. Some playmakers for the Sandia football team, some guys that are two-sport athletes. Gad Harris played running back last year. I think he's going to line up at slot receiver for the Matadors a little bit this year. He had a 6-yard touchdown reception and a 28-yard touchdown reception. The Robertson transfer, George Smith, who I think a lot of people in the Albuquerque metro area are excited about. He had a big 65-yard touchdown run. Sandia was up 20-9 with 2 minutes left in the third quarter. And, man, just a big fourth quarter rally for Pedro Vista to tie it going into overtime. I think Sandia got the ball first, just couldn't punch it in, and just a tough loss for Tylen Wilder, who begins his mark as the Sandia Matadors head football coach, his first season. So a tough loss for Sandia to start out. Sandia is going to take on Cibola next, or I think it's on Thursday at 7 p.m. That game should be at Wilson Stadium or Milne Stadium, I believe. Then we got Volcano Vista and La Cueva. That game was last Thursday. Back and forth game. Volcano took an early 7-0 lead. The Hawks were up 14-7 late in the first half. La Cueva got down to the Volcano Vista 1-yard line. A bad snap for the quarterback, Monty Melendez, forced La Cueva to kick a field goal. And then La Cueva got the ball back late in the first half, scored a touchdown. Bears led 17-14 at the half. Opening drive for the Volcano Vista Hawks, they took it down and scored. Tailback D'Angelo Mitchell on a 3-yard touchdown run. Volcano Vista quarterback Spirit Penn Cook was injured in the second half. We'll check on his health going in. But a big win for Volcano Vista, Dad. You know, La Cueva has been a perennial powerhouse in Class 6A football. They were the state runner-ups last year, state champions the year before that. And I don't know the last time Volcano Vista beat La Cueva. We'd have to look back on that. But a big win for Coach Chad Wallen and the Hawks. They'll be at Las Cruces this week. Big game for Volcano.
Some other scores from 5A: Gadsden 50, Chaparral 20, Goddard 41, Portales 6, Aztec 28. The aforementioned game that we talked about, both teams were winless last year. Aztec coming back after they trailed 20-0 at halftime, but I think Christopher Smalls and Rio Grande will win some games. They beat the Ravens 28-20, Hyden 20, Manzano 12, Roswell 27, Los Lunas 8. We had talked about that. Los Lunas, it doesn't get, you go down to the Wool Bowl, son, and you play against Jeff Lynn. Jeff Lynn's one of the best coaches in state history. So, you go down there, and now you got Cleveland this week in Los Lunas. So the Tigers have a tough schedule there. We'll see what happens this week. New starting quarterback for the Coyotes, Luke Lynn, completed 10 of 11 for 188 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tigers have Cleveland, and Roswell's on the road at Alamogordo. I talked to one of the parents from Los Lunas, and they said that Coach Lynn made some great in-game adjustments. The guy's a great coach, man. Bottom line. Artesia 48, Carlsbad 24. Our Bulldogs open up on the road. They'll take on Hobbs this Friday at the Bulldog Bowl. Artesia is played in their 39th state championship. They played in the last 4 Class 5A state championships. Bryce Pata, the star there for the Bulldogs, he had a 40-yard touchdown run, then a 70-yard touchdown run, and then a 35-yard touchdown run. Also threw a touchdown pass to Trent Eaglin, who's also a basketball player. New quarterback for Artesia's Derek Warren. Jack Byers, the 3-sport athlete, had a touchdown run and a touchdown catch for 40 yards. He also plays basketball and a pitcher in baseball. 4A Academy 42, Moriarty 21, Bloomfield. Big win for Bloomfield. Cover that one, son, for us. They're the defending champs. Cover that one.
Yeah, Bloomfield 63, Belen 12. There's a new starting quarterback for the Bloomfield Bobcats. It's the catcher for the baseball team, Manuel Peanut Chavarria. 15 of 25, 200 passing yards, 4 passing TDs. He also ran the ball for 37 yards and a score. Senior Peyton Duncan had a 27-yard touchdown run. Bobcats will take on 6A Pedro Vista, who had a 28-20 win over Sandia, as we talked about it. And this was courtesy of the Tri-City record, Steve Bortstein. A couple other Class 4A scores. We talked about St. Pius. They defeated West Mesa 47-28. Just a lot of weapons for that St. Pius offense, Dad. And we had Urshel Alloway Jr., the star tailback and defensive back, on Huddle Up a few weeks ago. I think he scored 2 or 3 times. Isaiah Carpenter threw for over 200 yards, threw a few passing touchdowns. Curtis Flakes III, the receiver, had a receiving touchdown. St. Pius, just, man, we talk about Class 4A. We had John Cobos on for Bernalillo. I think that's a deeper class than people think. We talked about Bernalillo Valley. Bernalillo defeats Valley 16-14. Grants defeated Mayamura. They'll take on St. Pius on Friday in Grants. Big game for the Sartans on the road. And then Hope defeated Del Norte 47-6. Why don't you take 3A, Dad?
Robertson over Socorro. Robertson's got a new coach. They got rid of Leroy. I can't remember Leroy Gonzalez. Leroy Gonzalez. The new coach is Lucas Sanchez. Leroy Gonzalez had some great success out there at Robertson. I was surprised. They've got, like I said, a new coach. The coach is Lucas Sanchez, a Robertson High School graduate. He was a quarterback for the program's first state championship. St. Mike's, they're still rolling. We're going to have to get Coach Fernandez on. They beat Taos 26-0, a lightning delay. Son, you had a lightning delay. I had one. And, in the August, September, that happens a lot. The lightning delay with St. Mike's and Taos was for 2 hours. Scheduled to begin at 6, didn't get the kickoff until 8:15. Legacy Academy 42 Laguna. They defeat Laguna 42-8, I believe. Senior Jay Lee returned 3 punts for a touchdown, 68 yards, 47 and 46 yards. Also caught a touchdown pass. They've got a new coach over there. And this one here, son. Then we'll get into El Dorado, Oregon Mountain. But you cover this one here. This one here, you had the championship of this game last year, and you cover that.
Class 2A football, Santa Rosa defeats Texaco 22-15. Texaco, 2A powerhouse, man. They defeated Santa Rosa twice last year for a combined score of 100-0. I did the Class 2A state championship game in Santa Rosa at John Warfield Stadium. And Santa Rosa was pumped up for that game, man. You had a great atmosphere there, and Texaco kind of hit him in the mouth a little bit, and it's kind of ironic that Santa Rosa gets Texaco the first game of the season. They played just after Thanksgiving. It's probably like November 25th or something like that. And then, 9 months later, they get to play them again. And, man, just a big win for Santa Rosa, I think, just for their program, getting decimated by Texaco twice last year to knock off the defending 2A state champions. And have some of their playmakers just play really big. They play a unique style of football out there in Santa Rosa. They run that wing T offense. The spinning fullback, David Chavez, scored the game-winning touchdown with 20 seconds left. Their lead tailback, Josh Cordova, had over 100 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. Just a big psychological victory for the Santa Rosa Lions. Couldn't be happier for that program.
How big is that? I mean, I think it's David Chavez is the coach. I had him on the sports desk last year, but you're circling that. They beat you pretty good. So the first game of the year, all summer long, the weightlifting and 7-on-7s and whatever you're doing, you're like, hey, we've got them out of the gate, defending champs. They beat us pretty good. And, the season, a lot of football left to be played, but that's, I think, as you mentioned, a pretty big win for Santa Rosa after Texaco. You mentioned the size of the Texaco offensive line last year. Those guys are huge, man. So they Alex Fuentes graduated for Texaco, and he's one of their better players. But you know what? Give Santa Rosa all the credit in the world. One more game to cover, son. We'll wrap it up. El Dorado and Oregon Mountain. Jahari Moorhead, tell us about him.
Yeah, man. What did he have? 9 catches, 256 yards, 4 receiving touchdowns through 2 quarters and 1 minute of play. I mean, those are insane stats. I mean, those are fantasy football stats. If you play fantasy football and high school football, draft Jahari Moorhead, because that guy's going to get you some points. He did an interview with James Yotis of the Albuquerque Journal. James Yotis posted it on X. And, there was a lot of single coverage for Jahari Moorhead. And I think as the season goes on, El Dorado's on a bye week this week. They don't play this weekend. But they're no longer going to be single covering Jahari Moorhead because he's going to be a problem for opposing defenses.
I talked to his dad. We're hoping to get him on either this week or next week. His dad was telling us they kept running trips to the right, and they didn't bring the safety over. I just talked to his dad last night, and he said they didn't bring the safety over. And I don't know. Again, coaching football, I don't know anything about it. But you would think after he scored twice, he'd say, "Man, we better roll some coverage, right?" And they didn't. So he had a big game, and he also runs track. His dad used to be a track runner at Highland back in '95. So his dad and I had a good talk as former Hornets. So we're going to wrap it up for this edition of – let's get Ryan Tamari to put on some comments. I think we had some comments for the live show. I love the high school football recap. Thank you, Pit Press and or Huddle Up. Go St. Michael's Horsemen. And that's from my guy, man, our guy. He follows everything we do, John Romero. Thanks for the support and love, John, always. So we appreciate your support on this platform. I think there's a few more. The whole town of Bernalillo should be in here right now, and that's from Ronnie Chavez. Ronnie's another guy. Follows everything we do, man. Thank you, Ronnie, for all your support as well.
I'm not going to come on camera, but those were pretty much, it was just all, hey, coach. So appreciate John Romero with that one. So
yeah,
just my 2 cents, guys. I thought Coach was awesome tonight.
You know what, Ryan, I think, when I had him on 4 years ago, he loves what he does. And you could tell. And I think, Nick, you would agree. You played for Coach Segura, and Coach Segura was not for everyone. I love Coach Segura. I would have played my, behind off for that guy, man. But he's not for, he wasn't. I'm not going to say that everybody got what he was doing. And he's a different type of coach, successful, 4 championships. Coach Cobos definitely has a way. What did Coach Hart say? A kid whisperer, and I think that's the highest compliment that you can give anyone. Sud, we'll see if we can get Jahari Moorhead maybe on Thursday. If not, I'll talk to his dad. He's going to talk to Coach Dotson and see if we can get him on next week for sure. For producer Ryan Tamari, for my co-host Nick Nunez, I'm Ed Nunez. We'll see you next time on Huddle Up.